Hi, this week on the Heroes, Villains, and Sidekicks Show, we'll be exploring the origin of a Golden Age character that you more than likely have never heard of. Maybe you have, but he's named the Flame. Now remember, I did say we would be exploring some of the more obscure characters out there, and this is one of them. And that's what we'll be doing here on the Heroes, Villains, and Sidekicks Show. We'll be learning and talking about the origins and backstories of heroes, villains, and sidekicks throughout the comic book universe and pop culture. So we'll be looking at both popular and obscure characters that you may have never heard of, but I think you'll dig. But now, how did I decide that I wanted to do this podcast on The Flame? Well, when I was working on developing the Heroes, Villains, and Sidekicks Show's website, I was looking for images that would fit the vibe I was going for. And now I frequent this site that has archives of public domain comics, and when I was there, I saw this character that sort of just stuck out, and he looked kind of cool. And, the red suit, the red and yellow, the little pistol. And while I was looking for public domain art, I just clicked on it. And so the character in all the headers, and probably soon to be in some of the other places on this site, is the Flame. And I thought to honor him, I should do a show on him. So let's get into it. Let's learn about the Golden Age hero, the Flame. The Flame was published by Fox Features Syndicate. The Flame first appeared in Wonder World Comics number 3 way back in July of 1939. And this was something very interesting that surprised me. He was created by Will Eisner and artist Lou Fine. Now, of course, Will Eisner is a master. He's amazing. Now, I'm a huge fan of Eisner, and so this was really great for me. This is really interesting that this character that I found that was in the public domain that I was thinking of using, he was created by Will Eisner, so it was pretty neat. Now, the Flame started out in Wonder World Comics, but he was given his own title in the summer of 1940. The comic was titled The Flame and ran for 8 issues until January 1942 when Fox Publications went under. I mean, there was a huge glut in comics, and just a lot of things where comics were falling by the wayside at this point in time. But during his heyday, The Flame was one of Fox's biggest stars. He was, in fact, one of the top 3, as evidenced by his starring role in all 7 issues, which started in the fall of 1940, of Big 3, which he initially shared with the Blue Beetle and Samson. So these were huge characters back then, and he was right up there holding his own with them. So I was really hooked on reading about Golden Age characters, and at one point, and I always found it interesting when I learned that a character that was so obscure now and so not there, that back in the day they were huge, that they were the most popular character that kids wanted to read about. And it always makes you think of what character will someone be doing a holocast on in the future about that we don't even think twice of, but that they love. So it's really fun to learn about Golden Age characters, and I'm probably going to start doing a few more on the show. Now, when the Flame isn't fighting crime in all his fiery glory, he's Gary Preston, mild-mannered genius and all-around nice guy. His story starts back when he was a baby, when his father was a missionary working in China. Now, his father was unfortunately killed and washed away in a flood, but he did manage to save his son by placing the boy in a basket. Now, the basket sailed down the river, and he was found by a group of monks who took the boy in and raised him. Now, during this time with the monks, they taught him their ways and how to tap into mystical forces. So, it's a little bit Moses, it's a little bit Doctor Strange. It's a really interesting sort of origin story here. So, now through this training that he learns from the monks, Gary is able to, you might have guessed this, control fire and temperature, including his own body temperature, to the point where he can burst into flames. And of course, I think this is where his name came from. Golden Age characters, there wasn't a huge stretch here. This is where he got the name The Flame. Now, through additional training and honing of his skills, he also gained the ability to travel from place to place, materializing through flame. Now, even the tiniest flicker, like a match, he could appear. So it's sort of almost like the Atom, who will go through phone lines and just sort of zoom through that way. He could do this through flame. Now, when Gary Preston has learned all he can, and reaches adulthood, he leaves the monastery and returns to America to fight crime, as one does. Now, of course, he takes on the name of the Flame. Now, to aid Gary, in his crime fighting, he actually engineers, because he's a genius engineer guy, he engineers a compact pistol-sized flamethrower so that he can always have fire around that he can control. So remember, he can control flame, he can turn into flame. So let's say he's somewhere and there's no flame, he has this pistol he made that he can sort of start the fire with and then control that fire. So it sort of works out that way. He can travel through flame, he can do all these things with flame. It's interesting, such a basic name, Flame, but I guess Superman, how original is that, right? He's a Superman. Now, the Flame has many adventures, and in time, through some of his adventuring, he becomes injured with a battling the Octopus, one of his arch enemies, and he must step down. Now, but before he does, he gives his girlfriend, Linda Dale, the secret, now all of a sudden there's a secret formula, right? A secret formula that gives her the secret powers of the Flame. So now she becomes Flame Girl, and she fights crime in his stead. So, she picks up the mantle and moves forward. And it's interesting because, of course, these are Golden Age characters, very simple origins, very simple backstories. I just kind of like this idea of this, the Moses in the basket plus Doctor Strange added in, that he can control flame. I like the touch of traveling through the flame. I thought it was pretty neat. I actually downloaded, you can download the Kindle edition of a couple of his books and read through them, and they're really fun. Golden Age stuff is wacky, but it's some fun stuff. So that's the origin and backstory of the character that serves as part of our site's branding. He is on, again, all the headers, and I'm going to probably be adding him in other places on the site. And I'm really glad I learned more about him in some of his adventures. And like I said, I actually found the Kindle version of his adventure, one of his adventures, on Amazon, and I'll leave a link to that in the show notes. I think it was only $2, and it was a really fun read. And again, I want to remind everybody I'm putting a video series together. Part 1's already on the site, and what it does is it covers the methods I use to put a podcast together. And the first part is sort of script writing and beginning the recording. There should be about 5 altogether, maybe 6, and I'll make sure I get the message out to you when they're up. Well, I want to thank you for listening to this week's episode of the Heroes, Villains, and Sidekicks Show. Our theme music is by Broke for Free, and you can find links to other music from the show on our website, heroesvillainsandsidekicks.com. Now, you can listen to the show there, but better yet, head over to iTunes and subscribe, or wherever you subscribe, but especially iTunes, and leave a message for us over on iTunes. We could really use some reviews. And if you leave a review, I'll go ahead and read it on the air. Now, again, if you have any comments about this character, you can go to the episodes page and go to that post and post your comment there. If there's a character you'd like to hear us do, whether it's in comic books or pop culture, you can also head over to the homepage, scroll down a little bit, and there's a form. Fill it out. Name of the character you'd like to hear. Little comment. You can even put your name. You don't have to. If you put your name in, though, I'll read it on air, and we'll do a show on it. Now, the Black Cat episode we did, that was a listener submission. So if you want to hear about somebody, just go ahead and sort of shoot me an email through that form. Well, we'll be back next week with more. Take care.